Hey everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. I want to thank you all so much for being here tonight. And for those who may be new to the show, if you would please subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And please don't forget to give the show a like. Now tonight my guest is Jason Offutt, which it's an honor to have him on the show tonight because my favorite subject is shadow people. And we will be talking about one of Jason's books. One of Jason's books. The topic is Darkness Walks, The Shadow People Among Us. And his books all can be found on Jason Offutt, www.jasonoffutt.com. And he has several other wonderful books on his website, which I'm hoping he will come back. And we will use one of his books for another topic. But tonight, it is on shadow people. Jason has been interviewed on many social media broadcasts, including Coast to Coast. And I'm really honored to have him on the show tonight. So let's welcome Jason to the show. Hey, Jason, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it. This is going to be great.
Now, Jason, before we start the show, would you please tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
I became interested in the paranormal at a very young age because I saw shadow people in my house. It was about, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere around there. And one night I went to bed and turned off the light and lay down. I grew up in the country, and we never had the blinds drawn because there was no reason for it. We didn't have neighbors. Closest neighbor was a mile away. So, everything, when the moon was out, it was nice and gray. I could see everything in my room. And one night I saw in the corner of my room, it was a lot darker than the rest of the room. And all of a sudden, a man walked out of it. It scared the hell out of me. And he walked by my bed. I couldn't see any detail whatsoever to this figure. It was just a tall, darker than night, human-shaped shadow figure that walked by my bed and into the hallway. And of course it terrified me. I yelled for my parents. My dad cussed and got out of bed and walked down the hallway to see what was wrong. He turned on all the lights, and of course there was nothing. Because that's how the paranormal works. People look for it. It doesn't show up. But that happened. It increased a little bit just for a couple of months. A couple times a week I would see shadow people. Just one, sometimes it was more than one, sometimes it'd be a whole line of them marching past my bed. And then abruptly it stopped. And I was on a quest ever since then to try and make some sense whatsoever of that. But from that, a little bit about me. I grew up in a small town. I was a newspaper reporter and editor for about 17 years, and for the past 13 years, I've taught journalism at a college or at a university in Missouri.
Oh, okay, awesome. When you saw these shadow people, did you try to communicate with them at all?
Oh no, I was scared to death.
I was just a fun. I would be too. I know it stuns you when you see them and you go, Okay, so Jason, now with your book, you interviewed a lot of people who also had those experiences. And with those interviews that you conducted, did everyone have a different story or were they similar?
It's a great question. Yes and no. There were enough differences that I was able to sort of categorize different types of shadow people. But there were enough that were the same to where there were a lot of experiences with each of those categories.
Were these experiences that these people had, were they all negative?
I can't say all of them, but probably 99% were. 99% were negative. Either just someone was terrified for the fact that I was. I saw something strange in my room that I didn't know what it was, and it scared me. From that to a person being physically attacked by one.
Mm. Oh, they were actually physically. Are you okay? So that physical attack that this person got, what was it like?
Well, it depends. The physical attacks were they're very rare, extremely rare. They go from everything from one woman remembered when she was a girl being touched by one, and it being extremely cold, and waking up the next morning there being a handprint on her arm that fairly quickly faded during the day. From that to a woman in Australia claimed to be sexually assaulted by one.
By a shadow person?
By a shadow being. And this was all about while her roommate was in the bed across the room and knew nothing was going on.
So when she was having a sexual experience with a shadow person, was there any form to them or any image of that shadow person?
Well, again, it was, as I described it, darker than night, a shadowy human figure. The thing with shadow people that, again, I put them in different categories because I think they're different types of entities, but they all have one thing in common, is that they're in the shape of a person, a cookie cutter. They don't have. Somebody might notice ears sticking out, but it's a silhouette. Facial features, what they're wearing generally isn't seen. Although we'll get to the Hat Man in a minute. Mm-hmm. But they're generally like that. And what she experienced was a shadow person, and she couldn't move. Her body was frozen, which is the case in some of these encounters. And she felt its arms holding her shoulders, and she felt it start to attack her, and she couldn't utter anything at all. At one point, she was finally able to scream, and the thing ran away.
Oh, it did. And so she actually felt it. She felt it as like feeling a human person. Or was it just pressure?
It was pressure.
Uh-huh. Oh, very interesting. Now, now I've also heard of other experiences that people have had where something will get on top of them and they'll be right in their face. Is that considered a shadow person?
Yes and no. There have been encounters like that were in my book. But most encounters like that, I tended to disregard. There's something that's called old hag syndrome.
Yeah.
That a lot of your viewers probably have heard of. This occurs when we sleep. When our body goes into a deep REM cycle, our brain is pumping chemicals into our body that basically temporarily paralyzes us. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't for this, just our muscle twitches throughout the night would keep us awake. So we're partially paralyzed when we're in a really deep sleep, and there are occasions where people will start to wake up during a dream, and it's called a hypnagogic state. And as they're waking up, they're still in this deep dream cycle, and they're paralyzed. So when they're coming out of their dream and starting to come into consciousness, they see the room around them, but they also see part of the dream that they're having, and they feel that they're trapped because they're paralyzed. So that's when a lot of these old hag syndrome cases are attributed to, is this hypnagogic state. So I didn't include a lot of them. If somebody wakes up feeling this, it could be true. It could be they're being attacked by something. But most cases, I have a feeling it's probably this psychological and physical issue.
The people that you interviewed, did they all? So from what I understand, these a typical shadow person is between 6 and 7 feet tall, and they often wear a cloak, an old-fashioned cloak, or they're wrapped up in something dark, and some of them also have hoods over their heads.
I wouldn't say a lot, although I do have categories. As I alluded to, I did put different types of shadow people in different categories, and there are categories of shadow people wearing cowls, like a monk's cloak, like the Grim Reaper. There have been a lot of sightings of those, and generally the people the shadow people who are wearing like old-timey clothes or a cloak are also wearing what looks like a fedora, which this entity's gotten the moniker the Hat Man. He's been called other things, but generally that's it. The ones who appear to be wearing clothing tend to be the more malevolent.
Really? All right, and then also some of them have red glowing eyes. Did any of you, the people that you interviewed, tell you that as well?
Yes, and that's another category. It's shadow people with red glowing eyes, and these are in every case of people of experiencers that I interviewed. Every case, these are definitely wicked. They intend to do some kind of harm. The types of shadow people that I categorized, the ones that I experienced that seemed to be just walking through my room, going from point A to point B, they never looked at me or took notice of me any way that I could tell. I branded them benign shadows because, again, I didn't feel anything from them, and the people who encountered them didn't feel any outward terror. They were just shocked to see something that looked like a dark human walking through their house. Mm-hmm. The ones with the monk's cowl, mm-hmm. They are tend to be more dangerous. That and the cloaked ones, they emit some sort of terror, some sort of fear. People who encounter them feel a fear that's not quite, that of shock. It's like they're being made to be afraid unnaturally. The Hat Man is like that as well. The worst, the Hat Man and the ones with the cloaks also tend to spy on people. People will notice them staring out of a doorway, like a person will be leaning in the doorway, or the shadow person will be watching them, or looking over the corner of their bed. The ones with black eyes, they've been described as like generating that kind of fear, but feeding off of it. They're like some sort of an energy vampire feeding off the fear that they're generating. And I didn't just write about encounters, although there are probably more than 250 encounters in my book. I tried to make some sort of sense of it, and I interviewed everything from physicists to religious experts. And all of the religious experts I spoke with, from Christianity to Islam and American Indian shamanism, these red-eyed entities are always evil.
They're always evil?
Always evil. I've been, from Christianity's viewpoint, the Catholic exorcist I interviewed said just immediately demons. They're demonic, absolutely demonic. The expert in Islam said that these things are the jinn, which the Western world is turned into the word genie, and the behavior of a jinn is nothing like what you'd see in the movie Aladdin or the old TV show with Barbara Eden, and American Indian shamanism. That these entities were human. They were the wise people. They were the medicine men who used their abilities for greed and selfishness and got turned into something that was not human anymore and was wicked. So yeah, all of these unconnected types of religions would all have the same opinion of these same beings. So I think that means something.
Well, all right. So, the people that you interviewed, how many times were they visited by a shadow person? And of those shadow people, did any of them say that they had a bad experience with them?
Yeah, well, most shadow people encounters are, one shot deals.
Oh, really?
You see them and you don't see them anymore. But there were plenty that were like mine that I saw the shadow person, more than one shadow person over a period of a couple of months, and then they were gone. There have been very few shadow people that are repeat. A lot of those tend to be, which is another category of shadow people, that they tend to be like residual ghosts. I think a lot of shadow people encounters are just ghosts, and that's all that they can manifest is that shadow form. Yes, but there are some cases. I interviewed a guy who had his shadow person appeared after he was using a Ouija board, which I recommend for no one to do. But the Ouija board, something came into his house that was malevolent. But the shadow person came in too, and anytime that this man felt that the evil was close, the shadow person would walk into his room and keep the evil at bay. I mean, this is how he described it to me. So this is this one in one good story in a million chances of that are usually bad.
Are all shadow people dark? Are they all black and dark?
Yes. I mean, they're. I mean, I wouldn't call them shadow people then.
Okay.
If they didn't look like shadows.
Okay. Now, why are certain people picked out to be visited by a shadow person? Are they looking for a certain personality, or is it just random?
That's a great question. It's probably a little bit of both. There are shadow people that just like someone. A lot of people don't realize this, but paranormal entities aren't confined to one spot. That's a haunted house. We think that the ghosts are there and they're trapped there. Well, no, they can go about anywhere they want to. And if you go to a haunted house and some entity decides that it likes you, it can follow you home.
Yes, I know that.
And yeah, there are shadow people cases that this has happened. Let me tell you a story about I can say it's my favorite recurring shadow people story because it didn't happen to me. A guy I interviewed, he was actually a former student of mine. He grew up in Iowa, and he and his brother, their room was in the basement. They shared a room, and they had a finished basement. And there was an entity that started showing up. And it never got close to them. It paced, he said. And in one part of the room, he said it was like there was a line that it couldn't cross. And it was, again, a blacker than night, human-shaped shadow. And he said it was wearing a hat. The Hat Man. But he and his brother referred to it as the cowboy because they said it looked kind of like a cowboy hat. And the thing would, again, just walk around in their room. And he graduated from high school and went off to college. And his brother was younger, so he was stuck in the basement with the cowboy. And he was in college a couple of years and just forgot. The cowboy never showed up. So he thought he was free of it. And then he started hearing because he was one of those guys who left a fan on at night. I'm not like that, so I don't understand why people need fans on at night. But some people are like that, which is fine. But he said he started hearing music that he said was like from the 1920s, coming through his the hum of the fan at night. And then he started seeing this cowboy in his room, just standing there watching him. When he graduated from college, he moved a state away, and again, after a couple of years, of not seeing this cowboy. He was in the parking lot of a shopping mall in Omaha, Nebraska, and his car didn't work. And he didn't know anything about cars, but his mom did. So he got his mom on the phone, and when he was talking to his mother, he heard a knock on his window, and it was in the middle of the day. And he looked over to the window, and the cowboy was standing there in broad daylight, as so black he couldn't, again, see any features, like all these shadow people are described as, and it just stood there and faded away. Oh. And he was certain that the cowboy was just telling him, "Hey, I'm here. I'm still with you. I'm still with you, bud." And this has been a few years ago, probably about 4 or 5. I don't know if he's encountered it since. I haven't asked him.
What are their motivations? What do you think the motivations are for shadow people?
It depends on what they are. I think shadow people are a number of different types of entities that just look the same because their behavior is so much different. Again, some seem to feed off other people's energy. Okay, that by all accounts sounds like a demonic type entity. There are ones that just simply seem to be spying on people. And the funny thing about those is if the person notices them and the shadow person sees that they've been noticed watching a human, they'll just take off running and disappear. And they usually won't be seen again. And then there's mine that just walked through my room. So I mean, there's lots of different explanations. What are they? Yeah, again, some are evil, whatever you want to call it, jinn, demons, witches, whatever. Some could be, quantum physics is shown that there might be different dimensions out there. Maybe in some places where people see these beings, it's really thin between the two dimensions, and we're seeing people. Maybe they see shadow people that are us watching them. That's another possibility. Ghosts are definitely another one. I think a lot of these occurrences are ghosts.
Yes. I read that at first when I've seen 2 of them, and at first I thought the one of them was a shadow person, but I believe that shadow person, it was all dark and black and everything, but I believe it was a ghost. It was just this particular ghost hangs out at the USS Hornet, and for some reason they don't want to leave, I guess. And so I thought it was a shadow person, but I really believe that black entity was a ghost, not a shadow. What we think of as a shadow person. I also heard that these shadow people could be omens for something bad happening.
Right, and that's Native Americans. A lot of their stories that also involve these type of entities they're omens. They're bad omens of death and disaster. There have also been cases where I've talked to people who've seen them, who've experienced something bad. I talked with a woman who, and she only saw it when she was on the second floor of her house. She would see, and she saw it for a few days in a row, a shadow being across the street, standing by a lamppost, and she couldn't make out details like it was typical, but it felt to her that this entity was staring at the house across the street. And then one day the shadow person wasn't there, but there was an ambulance in front of the house, and the elderly woman who lived in that house had a heart attack and died. Another one that's a little bit more creepy. I whose husband had stage 4 cancer. He was going to go any time, and as he was, in bed, he kept talking about all these people around his bed that his wife couldn't see, and he described them as the blacker than night human-shaped shadows. Just there was about 20 of them around his bed, just staring at him. He felt they were waiting for him to die, and he told her, he said, "Please, we've got to get out of here. Would you just please put me in the car and take me somewhere?" She didn't want to, but he was so convinced that he needed to leave. She did. She got him in the car, and they drove. She got about 150 miles away before she stopped, got a hotel room, and helped her husband into the room. And because he wanted to leave, because he thought maybe if they went someplace else, the shadow people wouldn't follow him.
Oh.
And he was so upset that when he lay down in the hospital bed, that they were there watching him. And then he died soon afterward. But she was convinced that there are these shadow entities just waiting for him to die.
Really? Oh, that's really weird. Now, do these do you think they enjoy scaring you? They're probably picking up on your fear. Is that also part of it?
Well, yeah. Like I said, this one type of shadow person that I've categorized does that. I firmly think that this one type of entity generates a type of fear in people. It causes this unnatural fear and then feeds off the energy that it creates in people.
Now, do you believe that any of these are hallucinations?
I mean, sure, they could be. I mean, but there are so many cases that are so similar, and I've, as a journalist and now as a father, I hope I've got a pretty good BS detector. And all the people that I interviewed, either this happened to them or they were completely convinced it happened to them.
Okay, can I tell you my experience?
Absolutely, I would love to hear it. I was scared
to death. I was home. My husband he is a retired San Francisco policeman, and he runs security on the USS Hornet in Alameda. So he had an event that he had to take care of. So my daughter was with me, and she was watching TV in the other room. And I came out of my studio, and I headed toward the kitchen, and I looked up, and there was this thing standing in the doorway. He was huge. He touched the ceiling almost. He was all black. He had an old-fashioned cloak, like Sherlock Holmes type, and I didn't see his head at all. So I kind of remember maybe it was like something around his head. He didn't have a hat on, but maybe like a hood type thing. And you could see the cloak. I could clearly see his cloak that he had on. And he had lapels, things on his shoulders like Sherlock Holmes. And I looked in the doorway. I couldn't even talk. I was so scared. And the thing about it is, he looked right at. I could tell he was looking at me, even though I couldn't see his face. And what he did, Jason, was he turned around in slow motion, and he headed out toward the other side of my house, which there is a doorway out there. And when he turned around, it was flapping. His little things on his shoulder were flapping, and it was like slow motion. I have never seen anything like that in my whole life. And then he made the corner and he turned around. And I never saw him again. I never saw him again. And of course I wouldn't let my daughter go home. I said, "You're not leaving me. I'm scared to death." And I've never seen him again. What the heck was that?
Well, that's like a lot of cases I've talked with like that. People seeing it looks your shadow person looked three dimensional.
I don't know. He looked like a. I saw everything but the face, and he was huge.
Well, okay, yeah, that's something else that are usually described is that there's something not quite in proportion with a human being. Either they're way too tall, or their arms are too long, or their legs are too long, or something like that. So the height is something normal. The ones I saw looked huge as well, but then again, I was 8-9 years old, and I was lying in bed, so anything could have been huge at that point.
Oh yeah.
I had one of the cases that I have that I thought was really interesting that had to do with, because this entity was looking at you and noticed that you saw it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And then it left.
Yes.
Yes. There are so many cases that I have that are like that. So what you've seen is not odd. I talked with a guy who when he was 18, he was in his living room, he was watching TV, and he suddenly felt that somebody else was there. He knew he was alone in the house, and he turned over toward the archway that went to the kitchen, and he saw this human-shaped shadow, and it was wearing a hat. It was the Hat Man, and it was just standing there. And then all of a sudden, it noticed that he was watching, that this 18-year-old guy was watching it, and he turned around and started running, and the guy heard a crash, and he got up and went to the kitchen, and he saw the shadow person running across the back deck and jump off the back. They had just were in the process of building the back deck, and it was to there was a basement, and then so it was kind of on the second floor. There was like a 10-15 foot drop. They hadn't put the stairs up yet. The shadow person just ran off. But the thing that really freaked this guy out wasn't just that he saw it and it reacted to him, but the crash was it ran through the back sliding glass door. And the sliding glass door had two panes of glass. The inside pane of glass was busted. It was completely shattered. The outside pane of glass wasn't.
Now you said that you have character. You put the shadow people in different categorizations. What?
Right.
How many do you have?
Wow, that's a great question. That I wrote the book a few years ago. I probably should have studied this. How embarrassing for me.
Well, just think of some of them, so you can tell the viewers.
Some of them is again ghosts, benign shadows, shadows that attack. Those are the ones with the hoods, or the cloaks. The Hat Man, the red-eyed shadows. There's also shadow animals. I believe those are all the categories.
Okay, but you say a shadow animal. Isn't that just a ghost?
Well, it depends. I mean, it could be.
Oh, you know what? Maybe
it's like a shadow person, except for it's a cat, or it's a dog,
or a hound. Yeah, they've got a black hound.
Yeah, I talked with a woman who she was 8 months pregnant. Her and her husband's bedroom were on the second floor of their house, and she told me one night she got up and went to the bathroom, and she left the door open. I mean, she didn't turn any lights on. She left the door open, and there was a window open at the end of the hall, and she could look right into the window, and she all of a sudden noticed a pair of red glowing eyes. And she thought, those are tail lights. But the angle where she was, and the fact that she was on the second floor, she knew those were not tail lights. And, her eyes, were pretty accustomed to the dark, and she noticed that surrounding those two red dots was a figure, and it looked like a dog. And the figure kept getting bigger, and the eyes kept getting bigger and brighter, and she was positive that this thing was stalking down the hallway at her. And she screamed bloody murder, and her husband woke up and turned the lights on, and there wasn't anything there. But that's also fairly common that these things will disappear at that point, like mine did when my dad turned the lights on.
Now, when did the Hat Man come into this picture? First it was shadow people, and then all of a sudden Hat Man started showing up.
Well, it's a type of shadow figure. I mean, it looks just like every other shadow person, darker than night, human-shaped shadow, except it's wearing a fedora.
And now, the people that you interviewed, did they all say it was the same type of hat, or they had other descriptions for hats?
Well, most of them are of the same type of hat. I mean, anyways, I interviewed a guy from Brazil who this hat man would frequent his house. The same thing, there was a woman in Australia who saw this type of entity, and a lot across the United States, and it all looked like, Indiana Jones's fedora. Mm-hmm. It was, looked like a gangster from the 1940s that, you'd see on TV. They've been described as different things, like, I mentioned the guy who saw the cowboy. I tacked that up to be a fedora, that a kid just didn't know what a fedora was. The only types of hats that have not been, fedora type, there were two bowler type hats from stories, but I mean, they were ghost stories. They didn't fit the shadow person, motif. They were more ghosts.
I'm going to ask viewers, if you have any questions, can you please start posting them now? We have 15 minutes left for the show, so if you have any questions, please post them so we can give those questions to Jason. Jason, can you tell us any other stories from your book?
Yes, there are. It's full of them. One of the this usually comes up when people just get a hold of me when I'm not on a show. They just get a hold of me to ask me questions. I'm available on Facebook and my and Twitter and my email address is out there. So people get a hold of me all the time to ask questions. And one of the questions is, how do I get rid of them? And one of the thing I really want to stress right now is, I'm a journalist. Okay, all I can do is tell you what other people told me. So let me tell you a couple of stories that had to do with people getting rid of shadows. There was a woman I interviewed, and she was being. This is one of those shadow people encounters to where it kept showing up. It kept bothering her. It kept standing over her bed at night and staring down at her. And that's really scary. But she didn't know what to do. She couldn't muster up a yell. She wasn't religious, so she didn't think of praying. So she did what came naturally, and to try and calm her nerves, and she just started singing. And the thing walked away. And it came a few more times, and every time it came, she felt more comfortable, and she just started singing, and then it never came back. There was a similar story, and this person just started laughing at it. Oh. And it went away. And then, I've talked to religious people who've encountered them, who've prayed, and they've gone away. So it seems, at least from some people I've talked with, that any sort of positive noise you can generate, whether it be prayer, song, laughter, will, keep them at bay. Again, this is just from people I've interviewed. I'm not saying this is not coming from me. This is coming from other people. But it makes a lot of sense to me, because in a lot of these cases, people can't talk. They encounter these beings, and they're frozen. They can't say anything. So, I mean, to generate some sort of positive noise seems to me logical that it might might be a deterrent to having them hang around.
See, I do have a question for you from Punji Fungi. Do shadow people appear in female form?
That's a fantastic question, and I have never gotten a female shadow person story. That's not saying they're not out there, but I've not gotten one, and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people.
Why, Jason? Isn't that why do you think that is?
Well, maybe those are the good shadow people. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. Well, okay. Maybe it's because this is why we see them as taller figures than we should. Maybe this is why we see them as dark. Maybe this is why we see them lurking, staring at us. And maybe the male is the scarier figure. Maybe all of these things add up to where they just want to make us as afraid as we can possibly be.
Andrew Cox wants to know. He said the black mist is also a shadow person.
Yes, and I've interviewed some people who've encountered the black mist. There are a few in my book, and I've written up a few as ghost stories in some other books that I've written. Yes, people have encountered. It's the same description of a shadow person, and one even had the dark eye, or even had the red eyes, but they're just a globulous, cloud-like form.
Oh, okay. Russell Hingendorf wants to know, can you tell us about incidents with shadow people who have revealed their face?
There are a few, very few in my book, and they come in one form basically. There's a second one that I'll bring up in a second, but first, there have been a few people I've talked with who said that they've seen through the veil, seen through the darkness, and it appears they claim they all look like reptiles.
You know, that reminds me. So I had someone that wrote a book about shadow people. She thinks they're aliens.
Well, I mean that's another possibility. I mean, with something like this, with any type of paranormal entities, paranormal occurrences, anybody who says they have the definitive answer doesn't know. Because unless we can prove something scientifically, we don't know what they are. They might be right, but we don't know that. They could be aliens. They could be, ghosts. They could be all, everything, all the above. I mean, that's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing all these investigations. We don't know. But I mean, it's aliens saying they're aliens, saying they're reptilians. All of this is trying to explain one thing we don't know with something else we don't know.
All right, and Jenna Richards wants to know, do they all have red eyes?
No, those are fairly rare.
Really? Wow.
So if you've encountered one, I would say good for you, but no, it's bad for you.
Let's see. A2 has a question. I saw a 7-foot shadow this morning. Should I worry? I have seen them for a few months now.
Okay, this is one of those things, people asking me how to get rid of them. I can only tell you what people have told me, that people I've interviewed have told me. I saw them for a few months. That's my only personal experience, and nothing bad happened. But there are other people who've seen them as omens. I worked with a woman who kept, because she knew this was before I started writing about this, but she knew I was interested in the paranormal, and she told me that she kept seeing these dark shadow figures out of the corner of her eye, and then she started seeing it a little bit closer, out of her periphery into her straight vision, a little bit closer, and at the point where she was almost ready to see it, her husband got diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and he died soon after. So, I mean, these things are either just there to look at you, or you just notice them, or they could be an omen. I mean, that's not you were looking for an answer, and I gave you 3.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
I'm sorry about that.
No. So, okay, so for those of us who have seen a shadow person, this bad luck, would the bad luck come our way in the future since we've seen a shadow person?
Again, going back just from the stories that I've gotten from people, if you saw a shadow person 2 years ago, no. If you see one over and over and over and over again, something might happen. Something bad might happen. I really can't. I can't definitively answer something like that.
Okay. Do you have any other stories you want to tell the viewers?
Well, yeah, but first I want to say if you're worried about the shadow people, just live your life like me. I'm paranoid of everything. So I'm always ready for something bad to happen.
Oh, Jason. You've written some fabulous books, Jason. I really want you to come back. I checked out your books, and some of them are really fascinating to me, and I would love to have you back. So do you want to tell the viewers where they can get your books?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Everything can be found at jasonoffutt.com. That's JASONOFFUTT.com. I've got a menu button you can push, and it'll take you to links to all of my books. I don't just write about the paranormal. I've got written some fiction. I have a couple novels up there. I have a humorous guidebook on how to kill monsters with common household items. Written a travel log. I've got a number of different interests.
Oh, wow. We one last question from Lightspeed Killer. Are shadow beings part of a generational curse?
No, because the oldest person I talked with had a shadow person encounter when he was 8 years old in 1948. Doing historical research, there have been people wrote about shadow people, hundreds of years ago. So these entities, and again, the religious experts I talked with, they've got stories from thousands of years ago. So it's not generational. This has been around for a while, but it probably comes in waves. A lot of paranormal entities, different ones, seem to come up at different times, and it kind of corresponds with what's happening in the world. When there's a depression, when there's a war, people tend to talk about ghosts more. When there's paranoia, people tend to talk about UFOs more. So these things come in waves. I don't think it's generational at all.
Okay. And one last question from Darlene Snixenrader. How far back have shadow people been reported?
Again, religion, biblical times, just a couple thousand years.
Okay.
And then who knows before then.
Wow. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show. Everybody, don't forget to pick up a copy of Jason's book from his website. We've all posted the website. And if you want to read any more about Jason, look on the description underneath the tonight's video. It will tell you more on Jason. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I had a great time on the show. You were a great interviewer. I really appreciate it. And I do want to tell your viewers that it's my fault that I wasn't live. That she had to use a picture. I'm camera shy.
That's okay, Jason. They still love you, so that was fine. Thank you so much for being on the show, and best wishes to you.
Thank you, and same to you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Oh, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the show. What a great guest Jason was. And don't forget, he's got a lot of fabulous books. You should go to his website and see what he's written. I am going to hit him up on some shows off of his other books. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to give the show a like. Please subscribe for anybody that's new to the show. And oh my God, my next show, I had my calendar. I wanted to tell you, the last Thursday of this month, Vanessa Hogel is coming back with Julia Siracusa, and the two of them are right now in Long Island, New York, and they are investigating the legend of Cropsey, and the ghost of Cropsey was a nickname that was given to this nutcase of a murderer, and he killed children, and most of the children that he killed were mentally disabled children. And one of these children, her name is Holly, and she went to school with Julia Siracusa, and the little girl disappeared. I think she was maybe 7 years old, and she has been contacting Julia Siracusa. So Julia Siracusa contacted Vanessa, and that's where they are. They're out there. Vanessa's going to do her remote viewing. They're going to be taking video and pictures, and we will give you the history on Cropsey, and I can't wait to do that show. So that's in 2 weeks. I'm not doing a show every week. It's summertime, and we're getting the backyard ready for big barbecues that we're having, and we're having a huge barbecue with the crew on the USS Hornet, and I'm really looking forward to that. So everyone, thanks so much for being here. Don't forget, please come back in 2 weeks. Share my videos. Let's bring more people to the show and subscribers. So let's do. And I want to thank my mods tonight, Royce Hinman and Unique Annie, Sweet Annie. Thank you so much, and thanks to the mods, for having a great chat room, and thanks all for being here. So let's do a fast shout out. Janice Ball, Chipatiri, and I have terrible time with names, so please forgive me. There's new people here, and let's see, Bo Tenzi, oh my God, Bo Ektensi. I know I'm killing it. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Don Peyote, Danella Daywood, Jenna Richards, at 2, Chipateri, Jordan Perkins, Darlene Schnickson Radar, Jen Young, Astral Virgin, Paraprincess Patricia, Athenia Brown, Ed Fern, and I know my Carl White is out there somewhere. Hi, Carl. River. Hey, River. Sean Bodine. Thanks, Sean, for being in the show tonight. We haven't seen you for a while. Donald McGuire. I haven't seen Jimmy Cortez in tonight. Zippy Davis. Anybody else want to shout out? Anybody else want to shout out? Oh, don't forget, and then, the mods are busy. Jessica Lynn, and I'm doing and I'm doing 2 more shows as well. Tommy Roberts, there you are, honey. Everybody, Tommy Roberts has had some medical issues. Please pray for Tommy, as well as our Royce Hinman, and as well as our Jimmy Cortez. They need your prayers. Let's see. Pungi Fungi, Megan Lane, B Singer 11, Bok Tanasi. Got it. Thank you for doing that. Maria Sanda Amador, Aaron Brody, Fenzer. Oh God, 86er. I'm sorry. There you are, Carl. Yay, thanks. Carl's always here, no matter what time. 3:03 in the morning. He's from the UK. Thanks, Carl. Love ya. Deborah Schlingel. Okay, let me tell you about the 2 shows that I'm going to be doing with Susie Randall, that I'm going to be doing with Vanessa. We're going to be doing the Ghost Show again, Ghost Pictures. So if you have any ghost pictures, send them in. Email me at paranormalzonetv@gmail.com. And also, oh God, what was the other show? Oh, somebody suggested this, that we take those cases from 411 from the guy, I forget his name, that has written those books, 411. Now he's saying that people that are disappearing are the cause because of Bigfoot. So we're going to gather up some of those cases from 411, and Vanessa is going to do her remote viewing and her remote drawing to see if we can find out what has happened to those people. Doesn't that sound awesome? I am so excited about that show. Let's see. A few more shout outs. Des Raz, Tina Olzak, Astral Virgin. Anybody else before I go? Anybody? Did I miss anybody? Yvette Sanchez. Oh, David Pilates. Thanks, Jenna. Yeah. Doesn't that sound like an awesome show? I'm so excited. Don't forget, I think that's coming in September. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. Again, thank you, my mods, Royce Hinman and Unique Annie. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in 2 weeks. I'm so excited about that show. And thanks to Jason Offutt for coming on the show tonight. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Love you guys. Good night.